Welcome back to the workshop. Several years ago I made this donkey's ear for achieving 45-degree angle bevels on box edges. This was actually made for Puzzle Box 1. If you'd ever seen that video, it was made for that project. Now I've got all these hexagons, and hexagons are different. They don't use the 90-degree miter. Their angles are actually about 120 degrees, but half of that would be 60 degrees. And so 60 degrees is what you're going to have to achieve to make sides like this. This is an example of sides that will need to be made to attach it to a top. And I need to make several sets of these, so that's why I'm going to make another donkey's ear. Not as fancy as this one, but something that will allow me to achieve making a 60-degree bevel for my woodworking. Let's get started. So, for figuring this out, what I did was I took my hexagon and I took my bevel gauge and I fixed that to the angles of the hexagon. Then, taking that with a protractor, set that up. Now, obviously, this area over here is going to be over 90 degrees, but that's not what I want. You know, that's 120 degrees, but it's also 60. It's going to be 60 on this side. So either you take the 120 and minus it from 180, or you know that it's 60. And so 60 degrees is the degrees that we'll need to achieve. And then look at this from this little block of wood. Let's say this is the block of wood that you're going to make your donkey's ear from. This down here is 30 degrees, this up here is 60. And so what you want to achieve is your piece coming down like this, where you've got your plane. And that will allow you to get your 60 degrees. There's a couple different ways that you can do this. One way is use your protractor and line that up, find where your 30 is, mark it on the piece, and then follow that out. Or a more fun way of doing it is using a speed square. Like if you have a speed square you don't use very often, that's a fun way to do it. Find your pivot point, and then find, now in this case you're going to be finding 60 degrees. And because it's going to be the opposite of what you're going to be doing, if that makes sense. So find that. I mean, you can see it's already marked, but I've got 60 here. I've got my pivot here, and it would follow that same line, which I've already drawn. And I'll do that on this piece and copy it to this piece. And I'll be ready to start cutting. Before I start cutting, I took a utility knife and scored this thing a couple times because we are going across the grain in several sections. I've got the piece clamped down on a sacrificial piece of wood. I'll use my carcass saw. I've added the other piece below this piece so that the cut can start affecting that one as well. Got my 2 pieces finished. Let's check it with the protractor. I'm not looking for exact, but it is showing generally around 30 degrees. So that is what we want. So what I will do is get these pieces so they mesh. A little extra over here I might take off, or I may not. I'm going to put a piece of plywood on top of this, so they'll be like this. A piece of plywood, that will be the bed for the piece that will ultimately get planed. I'm going to use some scrap plywood from long ago, stuff that came from East Carolina. You can see the holes as they were used to make crates to carry some of the tools when we moved. So the main thing is, I don't need it to be huge, but I do need to be big enough to screw the sides on and for these 2 holes. The 2 holes are for securing the donkey's ear, or a donkey's ear, to the shooting board, which also has 2 holes, and then I've got 2 brass pins that hold it in place. And then of course I'll have another piece, will be the bed. And so from this piece I've got some nasty stuff here. Probably, unless there's an issue, this will be the bed, this will be the bottom. That's probably what I'll do, and this will be stuff over here will be scrap. So I'll cut that next. Go ahead and set up my shooting board. Big 4-plane, standard number 6. Do some evening out of some of these pieces. Well, at this point, it is starting to take shape. It's got some lettering here, but who cares? This needs to be functional, not pretty. So I'm going to put it on there like that, just like the other one. So I'm going to go ahead and mark for the screws and drill for the screws, and hopefully we'll have something closing to the end. I've gone ahead and drilled the 3 holes and countersinked them, so they're ready to go. So kind of the way I do this. Next thing to do is to use the plane to bring this bed down to the to where the aspect where we want it, and then eventually put a fence on the end. Doing some of this trimming with my jack plane. Okay, at this point it's pretty much done. I've added a guard or a fence to the front to push the piece against. I've also placed this in because where I put the holes for the bottom, they don't line up correctly. So it doesn't really matter. This is really just for this project. So I went ahead and put a stop down there, and I can put that in place. And so, let's get a little piece of wood, and I'm going to use my jack plane. I suspect the foreplane's blade needs to be sharpened a little bit. Put that in place. And you can see it's doing what it's supposed to do. So now, pieces with the beveled edges, see, they can connect right here as they're supposed to. And so that is the trick. That gives me the angle that I need for the bevel for the sides that I can do all the way around, which will work for this project and could be used for future projects for making boxes. But I'm not making a box, I'm making something else. So stay tuned for when that project is complete. Thanks for watching.